So this lab will form part of a big structure of the NCRST, which we now call the RSTI Valley. It stands for Research, Science, Technology, and Innovation Valley. We have almost secured land to build it, and it will consist of research and training labs, where the GMO testing lab will be housed. It will consist of a space science center, which is an area of national importance in Namibia. It will consist of science demonstration center, which will assist in science promotion, which is also a national priority, and an innovation hub where scientists can actually develop products and then incubate them for commercialization. So that being said, after the appointment of the Biosafety Council and the Biosafety Secretariat this year, we have done a few things in terms of capacity building. The Biosafety Secretariat conducted a study tour to South Africa, and we envisage to undertake a few more next year. It was a very useful tour. We visited the Department of Agriculture, Environmental Affairs, Africa Bio. We went to see a lab that tests GMOs, Ecotech in Pietermaritzburg, and other places. We've also established or developed the National Biosafety Clearinghouse, which is currently not live, but it's almost live, to be launched probably in the next 2 months or so. And after establishing that, we've conducted training on this Biosafety Clearinghouse, both for council members and for the Secretariat. We consider this workshop as part of the capacity building activities, and next year the council will visit other advisory councils in Africa. So we're getting to the regulations. We have drafted regulations on the environmental release of GMOs, and these do not currently include confined field trials, but we've been told through advice from stakeholders that we need to develop separate regulations or include this in those regulations. We also have regulations on the contained use of GMOs, import or placing in the market of GMOs of food, feed, and processing. So the first draft of these regulations were presented to a stakeholder workshop on the 18th and 19th of September this year, whereafter we refined that and presented the second draft to stakeholders and the general public on the 3rd of November. This was a very interesting workshop, and from there we received some recommendations, particularly issues on liability and redress, which is not addressed in the regulations, and we are looking at how we'll include that in the regulations. We envisage to submit the final draft to the Ministry of Justice in February 2015. So that's it. To conclude, the NCRST is working very hard around the clock to implement both the Research, Science and Technology Act as well as the Biosafety Act. We see that the construction of the RSTI Valley and the laboratories is important for the full implementation of these acts. We undertake various capacity building activities to support the biosafety framework in Namibia, and we hope to implement or to start the activities of receiving applications as per the Act in July of next year. That's it. Thank you very much.
Any comments, questions, suggestions for Namibia?
Thank you for a good presentation. Just curious about how you would address the conflict of interest. Was the Commission for Science and Research as a regulator, as well as the promoter of the technology? So I don't know how you address the issues of conflict of interest there.
Yes, this is a question I anticipated because it keeps coming up. We envisage to build a robust firewall with the Commission. So we can just go to this slide. Currently, because of lack of capacity, you would see that biotechnology also houses biosafety. So the idea is for these two to be broken, such that biotechnology, which will be on promotion of biotech, will sit alone, and biosafety will sit by itself. So the file will be built in-house, and then we also have the council, which is an outside body, which is not sitting in the commission. So this will just serve as a secretariat, and the council indeed is the one that evaluates the applications. The secretariat will just do the administrative work. So that's how I envisage to address the conflict of interest issues. I don't know if that will satisfy you. Excuse me?
But under one post, because I think even the Biosafety office would be reporting to the Director General of the Commission.
Correct, correct. But we also have, like I mentioned, the Biosafety Council, which has other representatives from the other ministries, like the Ministry of Agriculture and Environment. And we foresee them to do the checking and balancing such that the boss is not the one, because the boss doesn't receive the applications. The applications go to the council, and from council to the minister. The minister approves at the end of the day.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to comment or add comments on what Richard had just said. We have been exploring all these options, and we've seen all this happening within our country laws. There's some institutions that are doing the same, and we found it working perfectly, as long as there's a clear firewall in between the institutions or between the division themselves.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You said that you had a very good workshop and 2 or 3 November, and also the public was involved. I saw your slide. Can you say something about that? How the public reacted on all the plans? Was there, did they agree? Was there resistance? Was there, well, whatever?
Well, several ways to define the public, but I don't think there was any major objections to what we plan to do because it is per the law. We however have some consumer groups which are not happy with some of the regulatory setup, particularly with issues of labeling of GMO products and issues of liability. But we are working on a compromise position with them currently. Subsequent to this workshop, there were some publications in the local newspapers as to products which are on the market, which are not yet regulated. And we have received this, and we're also synthesizing this to address this in our regulations. So I wouldn't say there was a big anti or big pro in terms of the outcomes of that workshop, but certainly the public didn't receive it with very open arms.
Can you please put back the slide on the valley? Valley. Yes. I see you're establishing a new lab on biotech R&D and biosafety.
Correct.
We actually, as a network, are currently working with a number of labs in the region on biosafety, on biotechnology, on GMO detection capacity. And one of the issues that has repeatedly come in this forum is about sustaining such kind of labs that are basically established mainly to work on issues of GM detection. And a lot of countries have gone to say it would be better to beef up existing labs that either doing biotech research already in the country or are doing capacity building, like for example at a university or at any academic institution, rather than having a lab that stands alone to do biotech and biosafety, to do GM detection. Or I see you've added biotech R&D, perhaps that's for sustainability reasons. Have we explored within the country in terms of enhancing or beefing up an existing institution to do that kind of role for yourself? Or you think this is
The best model,
the
yeah.
better way to go and the more sustainable way to go?
Right. So I appreciate that comment. It is the National Commission of Research, Science and Technology is tasked to coordinate research activities around Namibia. So currently we're conducting a survey to see what are the infrastructure that's out there in terms of people, in terms of equipment, and labs and so on, so that we can coordinate this into one place, whether in terms of being a system or in terms of being at a particular venue. And like you correctly noted, this is not going to be a lab which is only for GMO detection. It's going to be a lab which is a national facility that will have space for various kinds of scientific research. It's similar to the CS I have in South Africa, if you can compare it to that. That's the vision we have for it. We just visited there recently. And that's sort of the vision we have for it. So GMO detection will be once again just the section which is clearly firewalled from the technology development. We are also seeing, after visiting Incotech, it might not be sustainable to do all the testing or to do the testing here. We might have to send it out to an outside service provider, but indeed, as it's a national priority for us to form a lab which will coordinate research around the country in terms of innovation, commercialization, and technology transfer.
All right.
Functions under one roof. But what I like about this is we need, as Africans, to develop our own biotech products more so than just gatekeeping and regulating the one odd product that will come from Monsanto. If you go that way, really, you spiral downwards and you don't develop. But this is visionary. I like this. Because it says you want to engage in biotechnology, and you even know that space science for surveying your minerals and whatnot is actually key to Namibia. That's progress than this gatekeeping that we want to engage in for the one odd product. And we don't happen, we don't develop, we don't move. Let's do our own thing. I like this. I like this a lot.
You can just add to your comments, it obviously then puts liability and redress in a completely different light as well. Because if you do gatekeeping, that is a focus, strong focus, and it's a completely different focus than say, let's develop our own products for the benefit of our own community.
Should we break for tea?
I have one question. That's more a general question. This is more a general question. I'm from the Netherlands, and we also have a lot of discussion in our committee, the Committee on Genetic Modification. I'm a member of that. And in that committee we have two subcommittees. One committee is more scientific committee and then we have a committee for medical issues, medical applications, and for agricultural applications. It all have to do with environmental introductions, environmental release of GMOs. But another committee, and I'm a member of that, is called the Ethical and Social Issues of Biotechnology, especially GMOs. Because sometimes you have something like a new application that may result in societal issues, societal discussion. For example, last 2 years ago we had some applications. There was a firm that wanted to introduce a kind of very safe type of genetic modification for schools, just for schools to learn how this is a part of biology. But then, if you are going to do genetic modification in a very safe way, there were bacteria that were very kreupel in Dutch. Well, not really working and could not survive anyway outside the lab. It was a very safe application. But then, then you realize that you have parents and you have some discussion on GMOs. So, in such a case, the ministry also want to have some advice how to deal with such an issue, which is not especially on the application how it works, but how does the public react and do we have to do something? Or 2 years ago we had, perhaps that we had a very big discussion on the paper of Mr. Cerolini from France, and then there's a lot of discussion in the public media. Well, how safe is biotechnology anyway, and shouldn't we stop it anyway? And then the ministry would like to have some advice how to deal with such questions, and then our committee also gives some notes on that. And so perhaps, I don't know, is that something to keep in mind, but that are interesting issues, I think, if you're establishing biosafety communities in whatever form. And the last thing I would like to put here on the table is that in the Netherlands we had also a lot of discussion, and it was in Europe actually, on what do we mean by biotechnology or by GMOs anyway. And then we have a lot of discussion on the process approach or the product approach. Is something biotechnological product because it contains some GMOs, or that there were GMOs involved in producing it, but on the end there may be not even any GMO in the product at all. And that has also to do with new scientific developments as reverse breeding and so on. So I'm really curious how these things are discussed in the African context.
We had actually what we called public awareness or public education and public participation innovation platforms in 3 countries in the SADC: Malawi, Botswana, Zambia, and Swaziland. And they were left to develop their own system of how they want to do that. And we learned a lot from the Swaziland experience. The issue is, I think because of resource constraints, sometimes we are not proactive in terms of educating the public on the issues. And hence, when they react to, for example, an advert in the paper like Malawi say, to say, okay, there's an application, they react from an informed point of view, because many do not necessarily understand what it is about. And Swaziland, for example, did a survey to try and find out the extent of, or rather the knowledge that was out there about biotechnology and biosafety. And they looked at people from parliament, different parliamentarian committees that are relevant to agriculture, relevant to industry, and relevant to trade and industry, and relevant to environment. And then they also did the public. And they actually realized that it was necessary to educate even the decision makers on what this is all about, so that when a law is to be passed, a decision is to be made, they do so from an informed point of view. So I think the constraint has been resources more than not knowing that it's necessary to do an educational program parallel to educational and public awareness creation and understanding the societal needs, responding to the societal needs, rather than the fact that we are not necessarily seeing the need. So for the countries that did those platforms, Botswana actually spoke about it now. They actually brought a lot of information from the activities that they did that indicated that it was very necessary to do public awareness proactively, so that whether it's the law, then asked about how does public awareness input into the development process of the law, but the decision makers themselves, who are supposed to then endorse a law, need to understand what exactly, why, for example, biosafety is necessary. Some countries initially thought that in the meetings that we had, you will hear sentiments such as, we are being pushed to have these laws in place so that GMOs can come into our country, which is not true, because it is an enabling environment to enable a safe use for those that want, and also a safe assessment for those that do not necessarily want a GMO to come in from an informed point of view. So it's actually more about resource allocation and prioritization in some countries, rather than not needing it or not knowing that it's necessary.
Yes.
Yeah, just maybe a clarification for the concern from Botswana. I just wanted to give you an example of the institutional setup of the Environmental Affairs Department where I'm coming from. We have this is the big institution, Environmental Affairs Department, but there is a technical committee on environment which reviews the environmental impact assessment reports. But we have the Environmental Affairs Department. I think on its own it can review these reports, but we don't have all the experts that are said. For example, sometimes you have to have chemical engineers, like biological experts. So that's why they had to institute like a technical committee on environment with all these experts, bringing them together to review the environmental assessment reports. This with the biosafety is different. The National Biosafety Regulatory Committee, like these are just regulators. And the regulator, I think your concern is the safeguards. You are not necessarily an expert in that field, but as long as you know the safeguards, somehow you can try to review the application. But if there is a need to have experts, technicals in that field, it's when now this committee will constitute a group of experts to review the application for them. It's not a technical committee, it's a regulatory committee. That's why you have the registrar, which just look at the completeness of the application. Then you have the regulators who review it and see if all the interested concerns, we have the consumer groups there, we have the trade there, we have the police. They will review it and then they will send it to the technical experts to review the technical nature of the application. That's why I have this, it's like, as I said earlier on, a quality assurance trail, so that everything has been checked. I don't know how, if that is a bit clear.
You know, Tembula, we also have our colleagues from Biosafety South Africa and CSIR who will help me answer the questions. Basically, we want to talk about, give a background about where we're coming from in terms of biotechnology and the current status, then look at biosafety, landscape in South Africa, then conclusion and way forward. Yeah, in 2001, we set the scene by developing the National Biotechnology Strategy, which was informed by the White Paper on Science and Technology of 1996 and the Technology for Site Studies. The National Biotechnology Strategies was to promote research and development, entrepreneurial services, technology platforms, business incubators in the area of biotechnology, and the biotech regional innovation centers were developed in 5 provinces. These are some of the outputs from the National Biotechnology Strategies. About 14 platforms were established, 73 projects funded. We invested into 81 companies. There were about 221 products, and 122 services, 940 jobs. We also built capacity by providing bursaries. We took about 257 million leverage. However, the National Biotechnology Strategy major setback was that it focused on technologies that were closer to commercialization, and it did not take or consider the whole value chain from the research all the way up to commercialization. Then we, in order to address such gaps, we formed South African Technology Innovation Agency, which incorporated the BRICS. The aim was to then close that, to fill in that gap in the value chain. Then recently we came up with the National Bioeconomy Strategy in November 2013, where research and development in biotechnology is now coordinated. All the players basic research up to commercialization have to be part of initiatives that we support. So bioeconomy concept as adapted from the OECD, we're talking about activities that make use of bioinnovations based on biological sources, materials, and processes to generate sustainable economy, social and environmental development. Keywords there is enabling environment, develop and demonstrate, commercialize, transfer and adoption through partnerships. As you can see there, we're managing our national system of innovation according to industry sectors and incorporate value chain approach. This is just to show you the value chain from basic up to commercialization. All the performers, universities, science councils, and industries have to be part of whichever programs that we are supporting, and all the funding agencies must come together. So in this strategy, we encouraging all the role players to contribute to outcomes, resources and opportunities, and rather than compete. And the bioeconomy strategy is looking at 3 sectors: agriculture, health, and the industry. Let me just mention a few under agriculture for the purpose of this workshop. We want to establish agro-innovation hubs where we will promote development of new crops and animals to enhance technology transfer and mainstreaming of our indigenous crops for job creation and local benefit, and to support the ongoing crop improvement of commercial varieties. We'll also look at biofertilizers, biocontrol products, and investment in soil conservation and water resource management. I'm not going to talk about health and industry, but yeah, the under health focus based on active pharmaceutical ingredients and so on. And under the industry, initiatives to enhance water and waste management practices. I think this background is already known to all of us. South Africa is the leading producer of GMO crops in Africa and ranking number 8 internationally, and we already have commercialized maize, cotton, and soybean for the past 16 years. Some of the statistics from ISAA, in 2012, South Africa was growing more than 2.9 million hectares of GM crops, 86% of maize, 90% soya, and 100% cotton. And biotech crops have had a positive economic benefit to South Africa. Between 1998 to 2010, the insect-resistant biotech cotton has increased yield by at least 30%, and the total biotech crop income totaled about $809 million within the period. This graph shows the number of permits we've issued from 1999 up to 2013. A lot is on the field trials, the blue line there, then followed by continuous. The field trials and continuous, we refer to them as the research level activities. In a total of 146 permits have been issued. Then the general release, which is the commercial release in South Africa, about 16 general release permits were issued in that period of 1999 to 2030. Our regulatory framework is governed by national regulations and international regulations. Under national regulations, we have the Genetically Modified Organism Act of 1997 as amended in 2006, which primarily governs the GMOs, the use of GMOs in South Africa. This encompasses the entire pipeline of GMO development, including research and development, which are your continuous and field trial activities, production, which is general release, import, export, transport, use and application of GMOs. The Act aim to ensure that any activity with a GMO in South Africa is conducted as to limit potential risk to the environment, to human and to animal health, and take socio-economic considerations into account. The GMO Act and its amendment and the relevant regulation will monitor all activities within the GMOs according to permit issued under or in terms of this Act. The Act is implemented by Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries of South Africa. There are two regulatory bodies, namely the Executive Council, which is the decision-making bodies that is made up of representatives from a number of government. This includes, in addition to agriculture, forestry and fishery, we've got science and technology, environmental affairs, health, trade and trade and industry. Then we've got the advisory committee, which is composed of independent scientists with various scientific background. This body then advises the executive council as to the level of risk associated with the activity and whether the permit